I'm just getting this. We're live. To you, Chair.
Good morning. I'm Councillor Jim Vernon, the Chairman of the committee. I would like to welcome you all to this meeting of the Governance and Ethics Committee, which is being broadcast live and recorded for publication. One small note here, you all make sure that your phones are on silent. If you have any medical or emergency needs, you place it on vibrate, and then if you get the vibration and you need to take the call, would you please take it outside? If it's at a crucial point, I will pause while you make that call and then come back in. For the benefit of new members and the watching public, can I ask all members and officers present to introduce themselves?
Morning everyone, I'm Alistair Newall. I'm the Audit Director at Forvis Mazars, the external auditors.
Hi, I'm Bethany Banks. I'm the Manager from Forvis Mazars External Auditors.
Good morning, everybody. I'm Richard Elston. I'm the Team Manager of Complaints and Information here at NCC.
I'm Charlie Mason, Solicitor for Council.
Morning, everyone. I'm Nigel Stevenson. I'm the Section 151 Officer.
Morning all, I'm Glenn Bignell, Senior Accountant in the Financial Strategy and Accounting team here at County Hall.
Morning all, I'm Simon Lacey. I'm your Head of Internal Audit.
Yes, I'm Christopher Adegoke, Councillor for Cockmore West Division and Vice Chairman of the Membership Conference. Thank you.
Good morning, everybody. Councillor Richard Butler, member for the Cockeray Division on the County Council. Steve Carr, I'm member for Browncat and East North.
Morning, Keith Girling, member for Newcastle West Division, and I'm substituting for Mike Adams this morning.
Good morning, I'm Bruce Walton. I am member for the Farnsfield and North Muslim Division and also the Deputy Leader of the Conservative Group, which is the main opposition.
Good morning, I'm County Councillor for Blythe in Harlow.
Morning, my name's Cathy Mason. I'm a representative for Sutton North.
Hello, Stephen Pearson, Conservative member for Bingham East.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Councillor Kev Dale, works up north. Councillor Dale is standing in for Councillor Wendy Lukacs and myself as the chair. Can I invite the Democratic Service Officer to update the committee on the membership?
Just to roll back, we just have the first item is to note the appointment of the chair and vice chair.
Thank you.
All noted? Great. And so, yes, membership of the committee for 25-26. The committee membership was published with the agenda, but it has been updated to reflect proportionality changes following the elections in Mansfield North in June and Newark West in July. And Councillor Clunie is not a member of this committee, and Councillor Mike Adams is now a member. Thank you.
With that change to the membership published in the agenda, committee is asked to note the membership for 25-26.
Yeah.
There's now a slight change. The chair will make a statement as an opening motion, and if we list it as 2A, that might help for the records. In the public interest of transparency and efficiency, I could move to suspend under Standing Order 25.2 today's agenda. However, of course, so much work has been put into this and so many people are in attendance, we're going to stick with the agenda as published. Today, I will limit the chair's opening statement to a couple of thank yous and brief explanations, setting the scene for the public mainly. My short chairman's statement today is to be mainly to the public, whilst leaving all the other items on today's agenda unchanged to respect that time and effort made by all the officers and its members to attend today. And as always, to respect the taxpayers of this great county, the county of Nottinghamshire. It is my privilege to serve. So I will be very brief, but I want to explain to the public what the Governance and Ethics Committee are about. And as we have a lot to get through, and like a few members of the opposition, I've been accused sometimes of liking the sound of my own voice. But seriously, I would like to take this opportunity to point out to the public listening. Although viewing figures for these committees are usually low, it's because the figures are not everyone's cup of tea. But it is our duty to be transparent and openly accountable to the taxpayers of Nottinghamshire. Indeed, it's our statutory duty.
Yes.
I have been involved in.
Ask a question. Why would you want to suspend standing orders and stop this committee?
I just
can't understand why you said that.
I haven't stopped it. I'm continuing.
Well, why say it?
I'm continuing. I have been involved in some other committees, too many actually, where I have seen and heard some great things that were achieved by both the officers and previous members over the last 2 decades. The last 2 decades of enforced public hardship and turmoil created by both parties' own governments. I have particularly witnessed some great work being done, and importantly, about to be done, in children's services and adult care and welfare. So I'd like to thank those members for that input and for their service. So on behalf of my own Reforms Party councillors in these sectors, can I also assure the public that we are blessed with our own excellent Reform members, those on the welfare sections in particular. I'm sure together they will continue to serve those in need well. So back to the Governance and Ethics Committee. For those in the public, it simply does what it says on the can. We are the eyes and the ears of the public. It's a very powerful and very privileged position that we hold, and is, like all committees, a very responsible one for which the public pay us quite well. On that note, I would also like to thank the council's leader, Councillor McBarton, for trusting me and us with this committee's task ahead. Councillor Mick has an open door policy and is a man of considerable experience and integrity, who led us on our combined group's decision to say thank you to the people of Nottingham by not taking the pay rise offered for this work of serving the people of Nottinghamshire, by freezing councillors' pay for another year in recognition of some of the public's 2 decades of extraordinary hardship and some turmoil ahead, reducing the member positions required to run this council and saving an immediate £100,000, which will be reinvested. Councillor Barton and my deputy chair, who today was not able to make it due to changes in dates, have actually been hard at work since day one, supported by the officers here at County Hall. County Hall, a beautiful building. We have been training and preparing for massive changes and some chaos and turmoil, and sadly some hardships ahead in the next couple of years. So the role of G&E has never been more important. Huge sums of money, huge problems lie ahead, and it is vital that we spend wisely and transparently. It's vital that we govern and account for our actions and spending in the most robust, open, and honest way possible. That is the main role of this committee for the next 2 years. My role is to oversee and lead our elected team of councillors who, despite some media press attempts to mislead, have all been hard at work for the last couple of short months and are already moving mountains, making great savings. So for anyone hiding in the bushes, counting cars in the car park, can I just say, get a job. Finally, I personally, preparing for today, for my first G&E committee, G&E, Governance and Ethics for the Public, I'm in the office or on casework or sitting on other committees from 7 a.m. until late evening, 6.5 days a week. A lot of, can you be quiet, please? A lot of my colleagues and my deputy, some of them have other jobs and businesses. They are doctors, teachers, lawyers, and manual workers. Few are career politicians. That is what's great to see. And you'll see what we achieve in the next few years. G&E intend to scrutinise everything. No one will be allowed to stray or fail. if we do our jobs well on this committee. Changes are coming for the better. So now straight back to the agenda. Thank you for indulging.
Point of order. If this is how it's going to be moving forward, we have people in this room who have got nothing to do with politics. And this should be a non-political committee. You have just drawn a line in the sand. If you want it to be a party political committee, then bring it on. We're more than happy to do that and to hold you to account. And what do you think we are? What do you think we were in previous lives before I was retired? Oh yeah, I wasn't a career politician. I worked.
Me too.
And him, he was in the army. Bruce was a farmer and a teacher. You were at work. I've never heard anything so appallingly disgraceful from a chair. I'm sorry, but that you've drawn a line in the sand and you're going to regret it.
Can we have a confirmation, please, on what regulations from the monitoring officer 25.2 allows the chairman to do?
Yeah.
To look it up, Bruce.
I apologise.
Cancelling the audit and accounts committee.
Of 25 under the procedure rules for committee and subcommittee meetings is councillors must speak strictly to the subject under discussion.
So nonsense then.
So it's nonsense.
Yeah.
Well, you're entitled to your opinion. Can we get on with the agenda now? I've allowed you to voice your objections and your feelings. I start.
Right.
Please don't keep interrupting.
It's our right.
Do not interrupt the chair. Do not interrupt the chair. I've allowed you to vent your wrath. All right. You've allowed me to give you praise, which you seem to have missed.
Well, yeah.
So back to the agenda, please, gentlemen.
Oh, yeah.
So, here we are. Minutes of the last meeting held on March the 5th. Can I accept that the minutes as a true and accurate record, please?
I don't think there's anybody here, Chairman.
No, that was noted.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, I was one. I think I'm the only member who was actually at that meeting, and so for what it's worth, I'm happy to confirm the minutes are absolutely.
And I'm glad you're in house today, because I was relying.
I'd like to have my use.
Well, I'm happy in house today. I was relying on the monitoring officers who were also present and have assured me those records are accurate. 4, apologies for absence.
Yes, I'll explain those. Thank you, Chair. We have apologies from Councillor Mike Adams on other council business, and substitute, as previously stated, is Councillor Walker-Gurley. Apologies from Councillor Neil Clarke, MBE, also on other county council business, for whom Councillor Richard Butler is substituting, and also from Councillor Wendy Lukacs, other reasons given, and the substitute, as explained previously, is Councillor Kev Dale. Those are the 3 substitutions. Councillor John, you've indicated.
Councillor Mason.
It's Councillor Gurley. So he's presented his apologies for all the reasons.
I'm sorry. No, Councillor Gurley's in the room.
Gurley. Oh, not Gurley. Sorry, Walker-Gurley.
No, my apologies normally for what I say rather than not.
Okay, I've not received apologies. Do we know the reason?
Other reasons.
Other reasons. Thank you. We'll record that for the minutes.
No, I think it was Councillor Mason and Councillor John were going to say the same thing. I think.
Well, that's great.
Okay.
Thank you.
5 on the agenda is declarations of interest. If any councillor or officer has an interest in any matter on the agenda, you should declare it now, and you should state what type of interest it is and give brief details, please. Item 6 on the agenda, local government and social care Ombudsman's annual review letter. I formally move the recommendation included on page 9 of the agenda pack, and members to consider whether there are any actions they require in relation to the issues contained in that report.
Chair, can I just make a comment on the report? Yes, please. Before I move that, I just wanted to pay tribute to the officers. I think some hard work has been done to have quite a low level of complaints, particularly in special educational needs, where I know a lot of work's been done to improve the quality of service. And I think it would be helpful just to minute that we are impressed by the low level of complaints that have been received, and also the fact that the Ombudsman is satisfied that the Council has been taking steps where there are recommendations to implement those, because not every council does.
Thank you, that's well noted.
Let me just check that the motion's been seconded.
I need a second.
You do need a second.
So, yeah, I second it, yeah.
Yes, thank you. Thank you, Councillor Dale.
I'll now hand over to Richard Elson to introduce the report.
Thank you. Thank you, Chair. Yeah, to be honest with you, I've summarised the key points of the report, and thank you very much for the kind comments about officers. The council has done a lot of work, all departments, to be honest with you, in terms of the culture of how we deal with complaints. You know, we accept things are at times going to go wrong. You know, we're a big institution, but I think a lot of learning has happened. There's been a lot of training that's been done by some of my team. Some people have attended Ombudsman courses to basically make sure that we get to the root cause of issues and departments work on the service improvements that are needed. There's always going to be complaints that go to the Ombudsman. We have to signpost people to the Ombudsman. So there will always be Ombudsman complaints. But I think it is positive that, and of course there's things we can always improve on, but I think it is positive that, should we say, less cases go with the Ombudsman, less investigations, and where fault is found, we've implemented the recommendations. There's quite a lot of information stats in there, but I think it's also important that less than 2% of our overall complaints end up with an Ombudsman fault decision. So in the grand scheme of things, I think it's important we keep things in perspective, but recognise where work has to continue to be done. Yeah.
I would now like to invite views and questions from the members. Sorry, Councillor Law.
Yeah, Chairman, just to give you a bit of historic information, really. 8 years ago, when I set up the Governance Ethics Committee, one of the first things we did was allow our internal Ombudsman report to come in front of the committee. And the rationale for this is because what it does is it picks up trends very early on in the process, because if residents out there are complaining about a service, it gives us the opportunity to be able to hold those people to account very early on in the process to deal with those issues. So I'm just reiterating how important this part of the process is as far as the Governance Ethics Committee, and so from the opposition point of view, we welcome it, support it, and thank our team for all the work that they put in on our behalf, and express my view that it is extremely important as far as the governance of Nottinghamshire County Council is concerned, particularly over issues like SEND and areas where we are have a real demand for our service and require that scrutiny for it to be able to work effectively. Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor. Are there any other views? Can I also add then? I've read the report. I'm quite au fait with dealing with Ombudsman, and my own background is in quality assurance. So I accept what Councillor Law is saying there. It is very, very important. The only observation I will make, instead of annual, do we have corrective actions or preventative actions, ongoing real-time sequence to this?
Well, that's something we can update you on regularly if you want, but moving forward, we will have cases that have gone to the Ombudsman where, if there's, for example, a number of SEND cases, for example, we can talk about what the service improvements around that particular area are, and representatives from that department would come and present and answer questions on that.
I know you do that.
The reports come into us every meeting.
Yeah, that's what's been happening. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Thank you.
Welcome.
Agenda. So can we move to the vote then? Can we have a show of hands for the members that support the report from the Ombudsman, please?
Unanimous.
Councillor Adegoke, no, playing. Thank you.
Unanimous.
No abstentions, good. Item 7 on the agenda is the Constitution Review Working Group. I formally move the recommendations included on page 15 of the agenda pack. 1. Approve the establishment of a Constitution Review Working Group as set out in the body of the report. And 2. Receive a report from the working group on its proposed changes to the Constitution once the review is complete. I have a second.
I'll second it.
I now hand over to Marge Toward, the MO, and to Charlie Mason to introduce the report.
Charles is going
Thank you, Chair. As members will have noted from the report and from the full council meeting, council has provided an instruction to governance and ethics to establish a cross-party working group to undertake a review of the council's constitution. That's in accordance with the provision of the constitution for it to be reviewed on a 4-yearly basis. The current version of the constitution was established as a result of a change in governance arrangements from being a committee system to being a leader and cabinet model. Since the institution of that revised constitution in 2022, it's been there hasn't been a systematic review of it since. There have been amendments as necessary to it. There hasn't been a full process to go through the whole document and check whether it's fit for purpose and does what the council needs for it to do. So the proposal today is for the Governance and Ethics Committee to appoint a working group in accordance with the terms of reference set out in the body of the report to undertake that review and then report back to Governance and Ethics Committee with its findings and recommendations for any action to be taken.
Very much. I would now like to invite the views from the members. No.
Do you want nominations then, or?
We'll get them after. We'll get them after. Okay.
Do the officers have any additional comments or responses to the issues raised and points made during the debate, which there wasn't one really, but are there any?
So it's just a point that Councillor Carr's made. We'll approach each group and get their nominations.
Noted, thank you. So, vote for that. Show of hands, please. Unanimous. Item 8 on the agenda, Governance and Ethics Committee Annual Report. I formally move that the recommendation on page 21 of the agenda pack, the Council considers the achievements of the Governance and Ethics Committee and endorses its intended areas of focus for the current year. Do I have a second, please?
I'll second it.
Now I hand over to Nigel Stevenson, who will introduce the report.
Well, actually, Chair, Councillor Simon Lacey, if I may.
Absolutely.
No problem. Thank you, Chair. Nothing really much to add to the report. It's established under the audit standards. Some of you may remember from the training a couple of weeks back. Brings together the work that you've done over the year as a committee. This reflects the work that was done on the previous committee. So you're inheriting this, as we've discussed previously. But it really does enforce the requirement, as you mentioned earlier, of the Governance and Ethics Committee and the importance that it brings together the work that you do as a committee during the year. So it's a summary of that work. I fully support the work. Looking further on the questions.
Thank you. Now I'd like to invite the views and questions from any members. I have Councillor Carr first, I think. Councillor Carr.
Yes, thank you. Can I ask a question about what I'm hearing from other county councils that were elected reform administrations, that there have been attempts of unelected people to gain access to confidential details of people, for example, claiming PIP, etc., in an attempt to try and have a look at a detailed report of expenditure of that council. Have any attempts been made of this a group of unelected reform supporters to actually try and gain access to our confidential papers?
Yeah, I can answer that one if you're right. Thank you, Councillor Carr, for your question. And the answer to that one is really simple, no.
Good. Thank you for that assurance.
Thank you very much. Councillor Laughton.
Yes, thank you very much. Simon, good report, excellent report. Work of the previous committee is obviously coming to fruition, and I particularly, I make the point here that your department is about promoting, I'm using the looking glass or the magnifying glass icon, promoting strong governance and sound ethical values. So important, and it should be written right the way throughout all the work we do. So well done to the team. If you pass my thanks on to the team, I'd most appreciate it. I know what how the work goes on and what the working process is at your department intimately, and you continue to perform well. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
I'll pass those compliments on, and indeed, it is really carrying on the work that you set up years back. So that's what.
Yeah, no, it's so important to running the council.
Councillor Gurley.
Yeah, thank you. I totally endorse what Councillor Laughton said. Thank you very much. It's very reassuring as a council when you see that the way we do scrutinise ourselves. So I'm really pleased with that. But just touching on what Councillor Carr said, actually, and I wasn't asked his question, it's just because of his question. Can we assure this committee that if we are approached by these non-elected people to look at our finance and audited things, that actually we are informed so that we know that it's happening and under what authority that it's happening? So I need that assurance really from you, Chairman.
Well, it's on my watch. I can assure you there will be nothing illegal, nothing irregular,
I'm not suggesting it's illegal.
and nothing outside of the regulations.
I'm not suggesting it's illegal.
I didn't say you were
What I'm
suggesting,
asking
I was
you,
just
Chairman,
reassuring you.
Yeah, but what I'm asking you is if...
And what I'm answering, I think,
Well, you've not
there
really
will be,
answered
you asked me to assure you, and I'm going to assure you,
Now,
not on my watch.
Can I finish my question, please, Chairman? The assurance I'm looking for is not whether it will be legal or illegal. What I'm asking for, that if you are approached by, as Councillor Carr suggested, this group of people, that we will be informed about it. Not saying that you stop it, not saying that. What I'm asking is that we are actually informed that is happening, and it's not done behind closed doors, it's not done secretly. I'm asking that we will be informed as a council, as this committee, that it is actually happening.
Short answer,
Short
answer, yes. Councillor Mason.
Thank you.
Well, I think if anybody is coming forward to ask about that kind of information, is presuming that we're going to breach data protection. So it is illegal. No, we won't be doing it. And everybody should know, because I think there is a requirement on the authority that should anybody try to break data protection, that they have to record it. I think.
If there was a breach.
If there was a breach, well, attempted breaches are equally classed as severe, and everybody will be informed. So I don't think it's a matter of us personally informing you. I think the authority will do that. And no, there won't be any data breach. Well, if they're asking for personal information about somebody's PIP, etc., then it would be a data breach.
That's what we're trying to do.
Mr. Chairman, yeah, I think the point being is that can we be assured that external bodies or people who might be interested in investigating, for want of a better word, will be advised by your good selves and leaderships that it's completely unacceptable and it's just not can't be done. I think that's basically what the colleagues are asking. So really, I think it's just to show that at the end of the day, this committee as a whole is the body responsible for this sort of thing. And that if anyone external expresses an interest in getting involved, we thank them very much, but we are quite capable of doing it ourselves. I think that's.
Well, reassure you again, as a former data officer myself, this does fall under the GDPR and under the Constitution. And where it allows, you will be informed. Any other questions? Any other points? Okay, so we now move to the vote on the recommendations at page 21 of the agenda pack. Is that agreed? Thank you. Nobody against? Item 9 on the agenda, the local code of corporate governance and annual governance statement for 24-25. I formally move the recommendation. It's included on page 28 of the agenda pack. 1. The committee approves the annual governance statement for 24-25. 2. The committee keeps the content of the local code of corporate governance under review through the in-year governance update records to ensure the impact of the cabinet scrutiny model of governance is actively reflected in the code. Do I have a second, please? Second, no. I'd like to invite Simon Lacey to introduce the item.
Thank you, Chair. I'll take it that the paper is read. It's a standard document required by statute and the council. As head of audit, I compile the document on behalf of all the executive officers and departments, and this is a collective view for the leader and chief executive to endorse. They both have the opportunity to see that document before the committee and indeed recommend it afterwards. Really brings together all the views over the last 12 months in this annual statement to support our financial statements, section 151 of the school completion. Other than that, to any questions.
I would like to invite any views or questions. Yeah. Pearson.
Can I just ask a question? I'm looking at page 31 within the report. Within the code of corporate governance, obviously there's a role for staff and also a role for members. And I'm conscious we have a lot of new members here who, possibly aren't familiar with codes of conduct and that sort of thing. And the table that used on page 31 talks very much about staff recognising their code of conduct and their register of interests. But I'm not sure where things like member training and issues about potential member breaches of code of conduct sort of fit within that, because obviously potentially there is a risk for members to do things which bring the council to disrepute, and how that kind of fits in. I know there is a member training programme, but it doesn't seem to be particularly plumbed into the report here.
So, yeah, in fact, the majority focuses on the staff conduct, but actually the member conduct is also considered. That's part of the code assessments A to G. And we take the views both from the monitoring officer, chief executive, and bring those into the report. So we actually also pick up from the discussion of what issues have come up through the membership. So have there been any breaches, any issues? What's the rate? Relatively low in that regard. So it doesn't warrant a significant explanation in the annual statements for signs of risk in that regard, but it's a source of information that future can expand on that.
Thank you for that. That's helpful. I just think we're possibly in quite an unusual scenario with the amount of new members who might not be members of local authorities at all, and therefore it's more of a risk point than perhaps it might have been historically. Maybe
historically, don't forget that this annual governance statement is a retrospective document looking at your year 24 to 25. Now, sources that you mentioned will be considered, as it says, we will review the local code of conduct over 25-26 year, and all of those issues or instances that occur will be then compiled and brought to the same annual statement this time next year. So we are looking back over the previous administration rather than the current administration. So that's a very valid point for the financial statement.
Yeah, if I may, Chairman, clarification in terms of the significant risks, and it's quite a substantial training programme that's been put in for members by colleagues in democratic services led by the monitoring officer. That's why we didn't consider looking forward in terms of that being a significant risk when you take into account entirety of the local authority. But it's one of those things that we'll keep on review. But our anticipation is that induction programme is really rigorous, so we don't expect issues with code.
Thank you, Councillor Pearson. Good point. Well put. Anybody else? Councillor Carr.
Page 42, under climate change, and in the last paragraph, discussions have been held about insurers doing to ensure the potential impacts of climate change to councillors and groups are basically captured with using iterations in the County Council for risk register. Can you perhaps explain a bit more the involvement of the our insurers as to what they are actually looking for there with regards to climate change?
I need to seek some further advice from the officer who provided that comment. But my judgment would be around they would be looking at what the risks are going forward, potentially in sort of the flood relationship, because if there's additional flood risks, things would happen in here which would impact on the insurable risks of buildings, properties, particularly you have the issue of the water sports centre as an example, rising water levels, that often is floods, and we often see changes in premium, and indeed they will put caveats on their premium insurance if that happens. So it's probably from that direction of flooding prevention where you would have a further impact of flash flood, water flood on our properties, on our assets. That would be from the insurance perspective. They wouldn't be advising on the way that we operate with climate change, but they would be actually looking at how we're mitigating what the risks would be. That would be my take on where Zurich as our insurer of property, asset and infrastructure. So if they were at risk or additional risk or indeed at less risk and took preventive action, they would need to know that to do their assessment of
That's included in this building, isn't it?
Yes, this building includes any. There are a number of.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. In terms of the area, there are a number of properties that are rather at risk.
Start next year.
Yeah, but quite rightly, as Councillor Norton has said in previous meetings, in terms of surface water risk, in terms of there's a library, for instance, that's in a particular location that is suspect to or more higher risk in terms of surface water issues than it is because they're close to a river. So they've done a full assessment of all their properties.
Any other questions or points? Now move to the vote. The recommendations at page 28 of the agenda pack. Is that agreed? Abstentions? Item 10 on the agenda, the Assurance Mapping Annual Report for 24-25. I formally move the recommendations included on page 59 of the agenda pack. Excuse me. 1. The assurance mapping process is retained for 25-26. 2. The scope of the assurance map for 25-26 be consolidated to focus on the 8 existing assurance areas. 3. That progress against proposed actions to address the issues identified be reported to committee as part of the quarterly update reports on the annual governance statement. Do I have a second?
Yeah, second. Yeah.
I would like now to invite Simon Lacey to introduce the item.
Thank you, Tim. Again, those who were with us for the training will pick up what the assurance mapping exercise does. In terms, it gives us good information from the audit perspective, both what we can assure the council over those key areas, but it also gives us intelligence about what work we need to do within departments, or indeed whether we still need to do work in those departments because we're getting assurance from other sources. The assurance map continues to give us also good insight into where we can provide you with both positive assurance and where actually we identify work that might need to be sorted. And it also forms part of what you've already considered in the annual governance statement, gives us assurance for that, and And it also leads on and gives assurance for the next item on the agenda, which is my head of internal audit opinion, again, an annual report. Quite happy to take the report and any questions. Pretty much self-explanatory in terms of its coverage.
Any members with views or questions, please? Councillor Gurley first.
Yeah, thank you, Chairman. I'm referring to paragraph 7 mainly, but thanks Simon and Nigel for this report. I think it's a really good report, and it's good to see that there's no actual red flags, because that's obviously areas of great concern, and there's things in place to mitigate the amber flags anyway. But in terms of item 7, I just want to highlight the fact that in those areas that we're looking at, councillor involvement was really important. Yeah, and this was set up by the previous administration, and you had the head of finance that was at every single meeting that dealt with every cabinet position. And as a cabinet member at that time, it was not always comfortable being scrutinised to the level that was being scrutinised at, but it was good. Because good opposition, good scrutiny is a good thing. It's not something to be seen as a threat. It's a good thing. Because if you don't have good scrutiny, you end up like the city council and you do illegal things and waste money. So it's a really important aspect to have that sort of thing going on. However you do it, fine, but please just bear in mind the importance of having that kind of scrutiny where the cabinet members are involved in it as well, because that's really, to me, was one of the successes of why it was so good. You know, why we did so much in terms of how we spent our money, value for money, targeting areas that needed to be targeted, and actually reducing the budget where it needed to be reduced without impacting negatively on services. So I'm just sort of a friendly thing to say, look, you know, please bear that in mind when you decide how you're going to run moving forward, because I saw that as very, very helpful as a cabinet member. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor Gurley. My own background is in quality assurance, and I've worked for the United Nations Army in similar committees. So it is a good point. It is noted, and I can assure you that we will be, as part of the review, looking at everything. Councillor Law.
Yes, thank you very much. Follow on really from Keith. Right at the beginning of your diatribe, which I actually felt quite dangerous because this is a regulatory committee. You mentioned the 100k saving. The reason why you made the 100k saving is because you've taken the responsibility of the deputy chairs of the Overview Scrutiny Committee away from the opposition group. So it's actually the opposition group which has made the 100k saving, not the reform group. They've just tried to take credit for it. And my view is that, and be interested to hear what your view is, Chairman, that it is extremely dangerous to take the opposition away from any form of responsibility as far as overview and scrutiny is concerned. And I really do doubt that the overview and scrutiny system will work effectively, not having that level of input, the opposition group. But I do understand that you want to try and take credit for 100k that you've actually taken off other councillors of other parties. Thank you.
Well, thank you for your opinion. I don't necessarily agree with it. We'll add it to the other diatribe if you wish. So moving on then, are there any other points of view? Okay, coming up. Moment. Okay, we'll move to the vote. You can vote from the drinks machine. So the vote for the recommendations on page 59. Thank you. Councillor Adegoke?
Yes.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Item 11 on the agenda, Chief Internal Officer's Annual Report for 24-25. I formally move the recommendations included on page 77 of the agenda pack. That 1, contents of the Chief Internal Auditor's report be noted. That a further report be brought to the committee in 12 months' time. Do I have a seconder, please? A second. I would like now to invite again Simon Lacey to introduce the item.
Thank you, Chair. Again, similar to the first item that I covered, this is an annual report, but this time, from my perspective, about the operations across the council, and the coverage in terms of the internal control, risk management and governance arrangements, which I am bound to do by professional practice. Just as an aside, this year, or the 24-25 year, this year, we've been compiling the public sector internal audit standards. Those standards will change, and have already changed on the 1st of April this year. So next year, my annual report will be finalised in accordance with the global international audit standards as we introduced the training last couple of weeks. So we'll probably give you some more training to cover those aspects before we get to the annual report. But at the end of that, I'm more than happy to have done this report this year. It's a good report, giving positive assurance again in the area that I have to, and it again confirms what we've already heard, that the council's got good arrangements for its controls, risks, and its governance arrangements across. So I'm quite happy to take any questions in relation to the report.
Well, having sat through the training, I'm in agreement. I'm looking forward to it. Are there any views or questions from the members? Okay.
Now, can I just ask Simon? I think it's a very helpful report, and that there are some people out there that you know say there's a lot of corruption in local government, and clearly this shows that there would seem to be a very low level of dishonesty. And in fact, let me check whether I'm right on this, that the majority of the incidents that are reported in paper 102 and 103 are actually service users that have behaved dishonestly rather than members of staff.
I think you're referring to the next item on the agenda.
Sorry.
Yeah.
I've said to you.
Okay.
We didn't want to stop you, Steve.
I'm heading this up. Sorry.
These new councillors.
Oh, dear.
We're trying to work out which figures. We've done it before. We've all done it before.
Well, that's going to get later.
I think you put him down very, very fairly.
Huh?
Yeah, we've all been there, new, keen, enthusiastic, around those days. Anyway, yes, going back to this report, yes, as Mr. Lacey says, it is a good report. And the thing about internal audit reports is for people, whether it's residents or new members or any members, when you read the word internal, you think, oh, well, are we marking our own homework, in effect? Which is a perception that people might understandably have. But the great thing about this report, and indeed the ones in previous years, is the detail that it goes into is really quite phenomenal. And it's required, because at the end of the day, it's what audit is all about. But to assure anyone who might think that, well, if you're doing an internal report, you're always going to find things that are great or nothing needs doing. Well, as we see from this report, that's not the case. There is the old traffic light system, the red, green, amber warnings. There's plenty of green, which is great, which is what we all like to see, and there are ambers as well, which shows that we are picking up, or the team is picking up any areas that need further investigation and so on. So it is good, and again, as Mr. Lacey has said, the actual report itself, looking back over the past year's activities of this authority, is to be welcome. Perhaps one little question, which is just for general information to help. Would it help to perhaps just give a bit more information as to how we decide which areas of the authority are going to be chosen for particular inspection? Just for general awareness as much as anything as to how it works. But apart from that, really good report. And let's hope this time next year we have another good one. So thank you.
I'll pick up and respond to those. Just to pick up your first point, the key for me is on mine, might be slightly different. It's page 83. Clearly the diagram which shows where I sit. That independence, irrespective of any political arrangement, is the key thing. I sit in the middle, and yes, it's an internal report, but biggest word for me is it's independent. Nobody influences that decision.
And that was the point I was wanting to get across to reassure it.
So that's the key reassurance. Yeah. Next bit on your comment was about the way the team approaches it. Well, for mine, maybe slightly different. Page 89 on my version shows you that yes, we do have a pie chart, but there are red within the circle and green substantial, along with the reasonable. It doesn't mean that we roll over and die. There are things that actually come out from this perspective. So we are from that doing a balanced, effective job, and it's proportionate. So that's another key thing that comes to my mind. If I saw that there were no reds, I would like to report.
It was set the alarm.
Absolutely, yeah. And then just on your final point about how we take this forward. Again, we provided some training on how we do the planning, and we will be bringing the plan to the next committee. And that basically works on the assurance we get. We do exercises like the annual assurance mapping, which gives us assurance over some areas. We do a continuous audit approach, which looks at a number of systems and a number of processes in the background that people don't necessarily know what's happening, which gives us great insight into where we need to work. We also have the annual governance statement, which you've just seen, which picks out any risks or any risk issues and risk management. And we look at those collectively. If there is no assurance being given by somebody else in the council, or there are areas of weakness we identify, that goes in what we call our intelligence hub. That intelligence hub gets risk assessed every term. Every term, that brings out the actual items of work we're going to do in our term plan. Along with identifying those risk areas in the term plan, we identify the forward plan. So what we have already got we want to do, but also what we want to consider doing next time. So you can take assurance from me that everything we do because we have to. We do because there's an assurance weakness that we need to address, or there's a topical issue that's high on our risk register that means we need to do an assurance piece of work. Because otherwise, I haven't got the people to do everything, and I have to make my resources stretch on those key fundamental areas. We'll bring that to you next time as the first of our term plans. That's how we take a risk assessed approach to what we do.
Yeah, I remember the training about risk assessment. I think it's adequate, and I'm looking forward to the training.
Thank you.
Thank you. So, any more questions or views, please? No. We'll now move to the vote for the recommendations at page 77 of the agenda pack. Is that agreed? Thank you. Item 12 on the agenda. The annual fraud report 24-25. I formally move the recommendations included on page 98 of the agenda pack, that the contents of the annual fraud report 24-25 be noted, and the chief internal auditor's report be noted. Do I have a second? A second. I would now like to invite Simon Lacey to introduce the item.
Thank you, Chair. Okay, we'll just, again, this is the last of our suite of annual reports, wrapping up the work for 24-25. Annual fraud report brings together all of the positive work that the council can do to prevent and stop fraud happening. Where it does happen, what we do about it. We identify in this fraud report all the proactive, preventative work that we can do to prevent fraud happening, then what we can actually identify and do to recover. We pick up on here the national trends, we pick up the local work that is done in all the departments, preventing fraud from happening. But ultimately, there will be some, but thankfully, those numbers are relatively small and actually seem to be on a decline, which is good testament to what we have been working towards, putting internal controls in place to actually make sure that we stop them happening, or if they happen, they're stopped earlier, so they're lower and less. So we're looking for less value, less frequent. That's what we seek in the trade. Other than that, I'm happy to take any questions. Please.
Mike, got this question about, I was going to ask you.
I'd like to, sorry, I'd just like to ask a question before you leave in Councillor Pearson. I've also seen those figures, and I also interrogated them with Officer Stevenson. It's quite impressive the way you go about these things, but can I ask, do you separate members and staff from external fraud? Do you look at it differently?
No, fraud's fraud.
Fraud's fraud. Yeah. If it is fraud, it's a criminal offence. You're conducting or committing the same offence as anybody else, and that wouldn't prejudice anything. And that would then be a consulted message between the monitoring officer, Section 151, and myself in terms of the corrective action we need to take.
For the public's benefit, can I just confirm that we have a policy of 100% passing these items on to the police for prosecution?
Our policy for the county councillors, we will prosecute in every case. So ours is about chasing or making sure fraud doesn't happen in the first place, as Simon said. But if it does happen, then because it is council taxpayers' money, then we will go at every effort to prosecute and also to recoup.
Thank you for that reassurance. Councillor Pearson.
Yeah, thank you. Again, the second time. On page 102, it looks like it's a very, very small number of actual employee frauds as opposed to service users, just into single figures, which is quite an achievement. If it seems, comment on that? Or?
Again, you're right in your assumption with the figures, and that is correct. I think that is again testament to the council in that the way it's put those controls in place, it's got really good employment vetting processes, it's got really good management controls. So the actual opportunity to actually commit that fraud internally is very low because of strong controls. If it happens, it gets identified quickly, responsibly. The majority of it's in there in terms of the service users, because yes, there's a high number. We can't externally stop that happening, but what we have done over a number of years is when it does happen, it's stopped quicker. So we can actually pick that up. So the controls that people put in place where people are receiving those payments actually red flags it quicker, stops any future payments going out at a much quicker rate. So that brings the volume of payment down. It might be picked up within a month, whereas previously it might have not picked up for 6 months. But you're right in drawing your conclusion from that table.
Councillor Gurley, please.
Yeah, thank you, Chairman. I think given some of the statements made, public statements made prior to the election about fraud, fraudulent contracts, and things like that happening within councils, indeed, the leader of your party, the chairman of your party, and your local member of parliament reiterated those and shared those beliefs and comments. And given your opening statement that you've been working since day one, and I'm sure you have, can you inform this committee then areas that you've got concern where these fraudulent contracts and fraudulent things have been happening, so that when you bring in Doge, you can really concentrating on? Because I think as this report shows, and as all the previous reports show, we have quite a good grip on this council in terms of what goes on. And I'd just like to know from your point of view where your concerns are that we need to be worried about that this council is being fraudulent.
I'm not sure that anybody said this council is fraudulent. I can assure you,
yeah, it's on the leaflets.
You can smile away, but I can assure you, we have been working on this. And because the public are listening in, there's items on there I don't wish to declare. I can just assure you that by the next committee meeting, you will probably have some of those noted.
I'll probably have some of those.
Well, it takes as long as it takes. It's an investigation. Investigations take, we shouldn't keep talking over me, Councillor Carr. It takes as long as it takes. Councillor Carr.
No, okay. I was just going to say that the items of literature that came through my door were quite explicit that all councils were fraudulent and full of corruption. You may not have seen them, of course, because you didn't deliver them, because you came from your head office in London. And so, you know, we're going to come to financials later. And the reality of the situation is it was complete nonsense what was being said. And I agree with Councillor Vernon.
Can you stop agreeing?
I don't. I'm not using this. But, you know, this is just like smoke and mirrors.
Okay.
Smoke and mirrors. And I used to work in a bank, and I was in quality assurance in a bank as well. And we used to have a term that if the number on a cheque didn't match what was written down, it was words and figures differ, and that's precisely what we've got.
We're referring to this report at the moment, so thank you for your comments.
Yeah.
Right, this report is for noting, so it's not subject to a vote. Is the committee happy to note the report? No one against. Item 13, Statement of Accounts 24-25, Accounting Policies. I formally move the recommendations included on page 98 of the agenda that the authorities 24-25 accounting policies be noted. Do I have a second, please?
I second.
I would like now to invite Nigel Stevenson and Gareth Moss to introduce the item.
Thank you, Chairman. I will defer to Glenn Bicknell in a minute. Only to say that in normal circumstances, we would have brought this for approval, but because of the timing of the statement of accounts, because we've already published them, because there was a statutory deadline, that's why we're bringing them to you for noting as opposed to for approval. So the statement of accounts, effectively, we've got a set of accounting policies, which are the 151 officers' accounting policies, which we are seeking you to note.
Thank you.
Yeah, so this is one of a number of reports that relate to the statement of accounts. This report relates to the accounting policies that we've used in 24-25, and they set out the principles and rules that we've used to produce and present the 24-25 accounts. And the accounting policies provide assurance to members and to the residents of the county that we produce our accounts within accounting standards. As Nigel has pointed out, we normally bring these earlier in the process to Governance and Ethics Committee, but because of the election and the meeting schedule, we're not able to do it. So Nigel has been kind enough to approve the accounting policies that we've used to produce the 24-25 accounts. And those accounts were published on our website on the 27th of June, which was ahead of the statutory deadline set by central government. So happy to take any questions.
Now I'd like to invite any of the members who have views or questions. Councillor Laughton.
Yes, Glenn, thank you very much. The leader of the council under a previous iteration spent millions on acquiring assets across the country, many of which went belly up, one of which was charged literally numerous millions for replacing a lot of cladding on an apartment block. I'm just wondering, under the item 8, whether it protects us from that sort of behaviour, because lepers never change their spots, the tendency to do the same again. And what we don't want in this council is what happened, for example, in Mansfield, where they lost millions and millions of pounds, particularly on their capital, on that sort of behaviour.
I'll answer that on your behalf. But
because it's political, I like your style.
You know exactly where I'm going. You know exactly where I'm going, because what you're talking about is a policy decision as opposed to the purist of the accounting policies, because that's about recording the transaction, not about whether it's right or wrong or a political decision.
Okay. Thank you very much, Nigel.
Great answer.
Are there any other views or questions? The report is for noting, so not subject to a vote. Is the committee happy to note the report? Yes, please. We're waiting for this. Item 14 is Forvis Mazars 24-25 audit. strategy memorandums for 24-25. I formally move the recommendations included on page 134 of the agenda pack. The external auditors audit strategy memorandums for 24-25, and that is a mouthful. Thank you very much. Do I have a second?
Yeah, I'm second.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Could make it a longer mouthful by referring to both the pension fund and the county council separately if you want. Thank you. And as it's the first meeting in the new municipal year with a new formation of the committee, I thought it might be helpful to give you a little bit of background to the external audit of local authorities, just to help your understanding, conscious that we weren't at that training that members had on the role of the Governance and Ethics Committee and by definition audit. So I will just for a couple of minutes just give you a bit of background if I may, and then Bethan will talk through the County Council audit plan. I'll call it an audit plan because it's a little less of a mouthful, and I'll talk through the pension fund one. So the National Audit Office is crucial in external audit. They issue a code of audit practice, which all auditors of local authorities comply with, and the code sets out the responsibilities of auditors, of which there are three main ones. We audit the accounts, as all auditors, as you're familiar, all auditors do. We issue an audit opinion, and the audit work we do and the opinion we issue gives reasonable assurance the accounts are materially accurate. We also have a second responsibility in the local authorities, which is around value for money. And we satisfy ourselves that the council has proper arrangements in place to deliver value for money in its use of resources. It's known as the value for money arrangements. You'll hear us refer to value for money arrangements. We issue a commentary on the VFM arrangements within our auditor's annual report, which we'll issue in November and will come to us for the meeting of this committee then. Important to stress, the NAO's responsibilities of us are the auditors reach a view on the council's arrangements to deliver value for money, and that is different to coming to a view whether value for money is actually achieved. At a council the size of Nottinghamshire County Council, that would be a colossally large job for auditors. The code also sets out the wider powers we have and the responsibilities that are enshrined in legislation. Public sector audit appointments you'll see referred to in our documents. They are the body that appoints auditors to local authorities, and we were appointed by they go by the initials PSAA, so you'll hear us refer to PSAA. They appointed us as the auditor of the council last year, 23-24, so this is our second year. And it's worth mentioning also that the fees for the external audit at councils are PSAA's fees. They set the audit fees following a consultation each year. I think the current consultation is ongoing for the subsequent year's fees. We collect the fees on behalf of PSAA. We don't have an influence over the level of fees, quite rightly so, as the independent external auditor of the council. Where a local authority administers a pension fund, as the county does, then the auditor of the county is also the auditor of the pension fund. I am the auditor responsible for the pension fund audit. Mark Surridge, who is at a different committee meeting at the moment, is my colleague who's responsible for auditing the county council. We have separate teams auditing both elements, which enables us to specialise in those audits and to carry out the work concurrently so that we can issue the opinions at the same time. And the final point I wanted to highlight, I mentioned the word materiality earlier, and those of you who are unfamiliar in the world of audit may not have come across the term materiality. Materiality as a concept is key for us. It is a measure of importance in a set of accounts that we audit. We give an opinion that things are materially accurate. It has a financial value, as you will see in our audit plans, and it helps frame our assessment of risk and the work that we do responding to those risks, focusing on those things that are in crude terms of higher value. and of greater importance. And it also means the audit of accounts is able to be completed in a reasonable time frame, because we're not auditing every pound that's spent. So I hope that's helpful. Happy to pick up any other points in questions after we've just touched on both of the audit plans. And I appreciate we use acronyms and specialist terms all the time, so don't be shy asking us if things aren't clear. Bethan, do you want to touch on the council's audit plan now?
Yeah, so I'll talk you through the audit strategy memorandum for the council audit. So this sets out our audit approach for the 24-25 audit. Section 2 of the report details the team. So as Alistair's just mentioned, our team's led by Mark Storage. I manage the audit and my colleague Vic Ash supports the team through the detail of the work. Section 3 of the report details our audit approach. So our audit is ultimately guided by the international standards on auditing, and our approach is a risk-based approach. So that means, as Alice just explained, that we focused on the areas which we consider to have a higher risk of material misstatement. We are required to perform substantive testing for every material balance, but those areas that we've identified as significant risks are areas where we'll perform additional work. Pages 144 and 145 of the pack set out the stages of this risk-based approach and provides an indicative timeline. Our planning and risk assessment work is complete, which allowed us to prepare this audit strategy memorandum. And we've also documented our understanding of the council's controls and performed walkthroughs. We're now in the fieldwork stage. We've received the draft financial statements and we're executing our strategy, carrying out our detailed testing. We'll provide further updates to later committee meetings, but at this stage we anticipate completing the audit in the autumn, at which point we'll present our audit completion report and issue our opinion on the financial statements. There's a deadline of the 30th of November for us to issue our auditor's annual report, and that's our commentary on the council's value for money arrangements, as Alistair's just explained. So section 5 of the report details the areas that we've identified to be significant risk areas. The first is management override of controls, and that's a mandatory significant risk on all audits. The second is valuation of the local government pension scheme assets and liabilities. So the council has a net pensions liability on their balance sheet. And that's a significant balance which involves a high degree of estimation uncertainty, hence we classify it as a significant risk area. And that's pretty standard for any council that's got a local government pension scheme, so it's unusual at all. And the final significant risk we have is the valuation of land, buildings and investment properties, which again is due to the highly material values involved and the high degree of estimation uncertainty. So again, a very standard significant risk for a council. We then have two enhanced risks. The first is non-pay expenditure recognition, where our focus will be on non-pay expenditure being recognised in the correct period. And then secondly, IFRS 16 implementation. So IFRS 16 is an accounting standard being adopted by the code for the first time in 24-25. This impacts the way that the council recognise leases in their accounts, as well as PFI assets and liabilities. So given this is a significant change to the accounting treatment, we'll consider that to be an enhanced risk in our testing. Section 6 of the report details the value for money arrangements, which Alistair's already touched on. So we start with our planning and risk assessment work, and then we perform any additional risk-based procedures if we do identify a risk of significant weaknesses in the council's arrangements. Our risk assessment is ongoing, but at this stage we've not identified any risks of significant weaknesses, but we will of course update the committee if that changes. And that was all I really wanted to highlight from our report. I'm happy to take any questions on that before we move on to the pension fund if you'd like.
Really like to ask any questions at this stage.
Just make sure the pension fund does the best it can.
Well, so I will touch on the pension fund because it's the.
I rely on it.
It's the.
That was very bad for the chair and the show.
Yeah, I will touch on the pension fund briefly because, as it's been mentioned, so you've got the audit plan in there. So the audit the pension funds, you can see very similar documents. The key risks from the pension fund perspective is around evaluation of the investments. And some of those investments are harder to value than others. So they're in investment vehicles that are not quoted on active markets. They're not something for which a price is available. So the valuation techniques the fund employs are those estimates that are harder to value. So that's a significant focus of our work. The work is underway on the pension fund. I'm hopeful that we will be able to bring our completion report on the pension fund to the September meeting. The audit significantly progressed to give them meaningful reports.
Is that likely?
Well, I'm an auditor, so I'm going to be more cautious, aren't I? Because auditors aren't known for being overly kind of bold in their statements. So likely possible, shall we say? Hopeful possible. Is that? I mean, that's as good as you're going to get from an auditor, right? Reasonable assurance is the phrase that I come back to. Yeah. So I think that touches on. I didn't want to touch on the rest of the report in detail because it is very similar to the county one, as you can see. So if there's any questions, if there's any questions, happy to take them, Chair.
Councillor Pearson.
Just to understand that, I think you said quite helpfully that you look at value for money steps, not in terms of whether it will produce value for money or whether there are arrangements in place that helps you go value for money. But it occurs to me, I mean, we understand that the mini Doge team at some point will come down the road, and I guess there's some overlap in terms of that, and you may have to interact with them. If that's something that you have considered, would it have an effect on your fee, or any comments on that?
I don't. I mean, before something's in place, it's hard to comment on how that will impact directly. If that is a part of the council's arrangements to deliver value for money in areas, then that is something that will be relevant to our work on VFM, and we will need to understand those arrangements in order to report our commentary on them. In terms of an impact on fees, as I said in the intro, the fees are set by PSAA, so are nothing to do with the work that I do. I don't influence those fees. That is a PSAA led decision. So I can't really comment on how it would impact, as it's not part of the council's arrangements for the 24-5 year currently. It isn't something that we would be looking at.
If I may, Chairman, as Alistair has said, the auditor's view is around the arrangements value for money. I see in some instances, in terms of what has been said around what other people are talking about value for money, is more a view about the eye of the beholder, in terms of what one person spends on one thing might be seen as wasteful and spend on another thing as being the most and greatest thing they've ever spent money on, which is a decision about what to spend the money on, as opposed to what the auditor's looking about is, was the process around making that decision the right thing that the authority's got in place. Not necessarily where I bought a set of roller skates or I bought a McDonald's meal. It doesn't really matter, but one might think that roller skates was wasteful and McDonald's meals was the greatest thing you could spend your money on. That is a view about what is value for money, as opposed to what the auditor's talking about is, what's the decision-making process around that all up right, in terms of, did the authority assess whether they were getting value for money when they were making that decision?
I'm sure the public will value that. I don't know if
If I could, Chair, just to help on that, and it's about the value for money question rather than, and I get it that the audit is about the process of that value for money, but what sometimes people, particularly if you've not been in it before, might not understand sometimes, and I've made those decisions as a cabinet member. I've taken less of an amount of money for selling something because of the social value that has. So say for example, it's a piece of land, and that piece of land is worth £1,000, but I've sold it for £500. The social value would be way more than that £1,000, and so it's very relative whether it's value for money or not, and it depends on what your social conscience is. It's all sorts of factors involved in it. So it's not just a case of black and white, oh, you should have got £1,000 for that. Plus, there's also the fact I could point to a piece of land in Ashfield, which when I first became the cabinet member, it was valued by this council as being worth £19 million. By the time anything was done with it, because it doesn't happen like that in property, I think we got about £4.5 million. Sorry, £19 million. We got about £4.5 million for it. But there's also a social element to that, because the land was used to build a centre on it of excellence for automated industry training. So there's all sorts of things which makes it value from that. Now, you might think that selling it for £4.5 million was a bad deal because you should have got £19 million. The reality is that land value went down anyway, because cost of goods went up. So doing anything on it went up, which means the value of the land comes down to make it viable, and people are going to get jobs from that. So it's a relative thing. So I'm happy when those come in and say I've sold something for undervalue to argue my points on why I think it was good value.
But I've given you a lot of time there. Two good explanations of VFM. VFM is subjective, and I'm sure members of the public watching that will know that and others that won't. So thank you both for the explanations. Right, the report is for noting, so not subject to a vote. Is the committee happy to note the report? Thank you. Item 15 on the agenda is the work programme, the American spelling. Are there any amendments to the work programme?
A query really, Mr. Chair, because the work programme is, by its nature, is determined and decided quite a way ahead of where it happens. Now, I'm just wondering whether, given some news or announcements that came out from either yourself or your colleagues about County Hall, you know, are we going, are we staying, and so on and so forth. And I know reports have been said that we're staying, which is a take. But I'm wondering, given the fact that the decisions taken in the first place to not be at County Hall would have had an impact, a positive impact on budgets and all the rest of it, do we need to perhaps have a look at how any potential change to that policy would impact the services that we're providing?
The work programme is a work in action, and as part of an early review, when we get around the table with the working group, which will be cross-party, that is part of the agenda. How do we change the work programme? Because we have MCA, we have LGR looming and other things, and I think it's going to change quite considerably, and I'm sure Marge would like to.
Yeah, so what I was going to say before you got in for me was I think we need to review the work programme, because we set it, as you rightly say, a year in advance. So I think now we need to look at it and look at the priorities and look at what we want to consider. The particular point you make about County Hall, I wonder if that might not be more appropriate for a scrutiny time activity rather than governance and ethics.
Just a suggestion.
Yeah.
Councillor Gurley.
Well, to be honest, I take what the monitoring officers said, to be fair, but I was going to sort of back up my colleague about it, because he made a big thing about saving £100,000 by not taking pay rises or whatever. But then you're committing £1.7 million for keeping in this place that he wasn't going to have to spend, plus the £50 million it would cost to.
Let's use the same analogy of VFM.
Well,
it's subjective.
I think that's more about where's the VFM for the members of the public. This is all about you wanting to be in a nice posh building. Whereas, you know, saving £50 million and saving £1.7 million a year, this can be used on children's services.
Okay,
and adult social care. I'm sorry, I'm not allowed to speak.
No, I'm conscious of the time. Getting a lot of speeches. We're not addressing.
Well, no,
we're not addressing the issues that are on the agenda.
You're very good, Chairman, as a party of stopping debate and stopping people having their say.
I think I've been very
well, you're not letting me finish.
But I'd like to move on.
Exactly. Thank you for bringing that point.
So I'd like to invite if there's any more views for the Councillor Carr.
Yes, thank you. Seeing as we've now said that we're going to review this, and I think that's possibly a good way forward, because things have changed dramatically, not just here but nationally. One of the things is we keep referring to this team from Reform UK that may or may not turn up on our doorstep asking to see all sorts of things. It's happened in other county councils. What I would ask is that if they do turn up, monitoring officer, that there is an extraordinary meeting of this committee to talk to them before anything is allowed to happen.
We'd have to make a judgment on that at the time.
Yeah.
I don't know, nobody's approached us, nobody's come, so.
No, I'm just saying if they do.
So if there are no other points then, the report is for noting and so not subject to a vote. Is the committee happy to note the report? Fine, thank you. I will now, I'm on 15, yes?
Yes.
I will now formally close the meeting.